Of performance covenant and review of final roadway improvements and submitted as-built plan.
So as a little bit of back history, this was a subdivision, it was part of the Flores Way subdivision, which dated back to around 2018, actually previous to that, 2008. In 2018, there was a new plan for just this one section of Lion Road endorsed by the planning board, and at that time, a covenant that covered the release and the performance of roadway and utility construction for the 3 lots that were on that little private way dead end. Up until this year, there were 2 homes that were previously built. One home. One house was now starting this year, and then a 3rd lot that is still currently vacant. So the applicant over the end of the summer and fall finalized and completed all of the construction activity, did an incredible job. To the satisfaction of all of the abutting homes as well as the new homes that were built on this street as well. So I can offer that everything has been built in compliance with the approved plan. There was no surety ever for this. This was just strictly lot releases and lots being held until the roadway work was completed. So Nina does have in your package a Form E, which is the release of the recorded covenant for your endorsement. So there are signature lines for the planning board. Something we do with these covenants, and I've only saw this over past practice, at some point during the week, whoever signs this needs to come in and have their signature notarized at the city clerk's office. So we can sign on the standard lines for planning board members, but then at some point during the week, if you can come in and
Every one of us, or just?
everyone who signs
Okay.
tonight. So if we want to minimize that, we only need a majority to sign.
Okay.
So if you want to minimize who needs to come in, you guys can decide who signs tonight. And then only those people need to come and get the signatures notarized.
Excuse me, so the, what we have recorded giving authority to the chair to sign the,
That's plans,
A&Rs,
yeah.
It doesn't cover all
No,
the
well,
documents?
At least
just
what
A&Rs?
I could find through all of the past Form Es that we had, it had every planning board member. I was hoping that was the case because John does come in
Yeah,
often,
yeah,
so
yeah.
I apologize, but I didn't want to, I don't want to screw around with past practice.
Okay, just checking, thank you.
Yep.
Do we have any questions? No questions? So do we have a motion to release the performance covenant?
I'll motion to release.
Motion by Beth,
A
second
second.
by Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye as well. Beth and Mike. All right, number 2 under new business, proposed zoning map amendment. Discuss and make a recommendation to Fall River City Council with regards to the extension of the waterfront and transit-oriented development district, WTOD, as follows. Easterly from the easterly side of Duval Street to the westerly side of North Main Street. Northerly from the north side of Walnut Street to a point approximately 640 feet north of the northerly side of Wayland Street.
So in your packages, you have a little narrative that I put together and 2 exhibit plans that illustrate what the proposed activity is. So I'll read you through the narrative paper that I provided you all first. So what are we discussing? It's the expansion and the extension of the existing WTOD, which currently runs along the edge of the Taunton River, easterly to Duval Street north. So that runs from just about where Tipsy Toboggan area is, all the way up to Weaver's Cove area, just past the Route 79 interchange. And if you look at the existing map, which is the area not in red, so you'll see the yellow area that runs along the Taunton River, you'll see how we had the very little narrow sliver that connected the WTOD along actual Route 79 to that area, which was north of the 79 interchange and Weaver Street. So when we started looking at this, we determined that since the new Route 79 area itself was already falling under this WTOD, it made sense to make some type of a change. And through some of the research that we found, these were all improvements and recommendations of past practice and past plans that were prepared for the city, most notably the Waterfront Urban Renewal Plan. So what is the WTOD? The WTOD zoning district was created, I think around 2008, 2010-ish. And what the intention of that was to provide different types of opportunities for development along the waterfront corridor. Increase multifamily unit density of 4-unit minimum structures, multi-use residential, retail, commercial, and recreational mixed-use facilities, reduced parking requirements, reduced parcel size, increased building height, and increased lot coverage. So what we're proposing, we just gave you that same explanation of where the location of this is. So if you look at the two maps, you'll see what this does is creates a fairly parallel distance running along from the Taunton River heading easterly. And what it does is it occupies a number of segmented, smaller little zoning districts, whether they be BL, General Zoning District, R4, multifamily, commercial mill district. So it covers those areas. So the questions people ask, well, why are you doing this now? So again, as I previously mentioned, in 2019, the city had spent some dollars creating this Fall River waterfront urban renewal plan. I don't think it ever was completed and brought to fruition. However, one of the major recommendations that it had proposed was something very similar to this, encompassing this area up to North Main Street. Again, the area falls within the developable parcels through Route 79 already fall under the WTOD, so this would create a cohesive area from the waterfront through that new Route 79 area up to North Main Street. I think some of you are familiar with the South Coast Rail MBTA housing requirements that the state implemented for when you have a station. In order to be provided service and to be able to apply for and receive funding from a number of grant opportunities, you need to meet multifamily housing requirements that the state tells you you need to. So we had to go through a preliminary step. It took us, I don't know, about a year to receive what's called interim compliance. So we have a number of years to become in full compliance. We were able to achieve interim status almost immediately because of the existence of the WTOD district in this area. And what they've done is when they examined what was proposed, I can't take credit for it, I wasn't here at the time, but it's basically what they want every other community to do, to allow this type of development in an area that has increased density for specifically multifamily housing. As you all know, Fall River creates many, many multifamily housing opportunities where a lot of communities surround us lack in that. So a lot of those are being forced to come up with different ways of being able to provide greater multifamily housing. So we've led the forefront in zoning that allows those types of works to take place. What this will allow us to do is the existing structures, because right now, even though we may have some 6-family, 12-family, 20-unit buildings in this G district, commercial mill district, anywhere in the area that you see wrapped in red on our plans, we don't get credit for them, even though they're existing. It's because they're there either by being pre-existing or were granted zoning relief. That does not qualify. It has to be allowed by right, which is what the WTOD's district does. So by making this WTOD, we can now get credit for all of that multifamily housing that you see along North Main Street. The Weaver's Cove apartment complex, for instance, on Weaver Street, we don't get credit for that. That's exactly what they want you to build, but they're not looking at what's actually built or what could be built with special permits or variances. It has to be by right. So that will allow us to capture that area that already predominantly is, surrounded by these types of uses and to be able to get credit for it. So it will allow us to grab all that and get credit. It will also allow for some of the, 2- and 3-family buildings that are in this area that don't meet the current zoning bylaws for the general district or for the 2-family zoning districts. It may allow them to get to 4 units if they can meet the parking demand, thus increasing the types of housing that we have through that area. Everybody's very worried about, well, you guys are building all of these, big new apartment buildings. How about the tenement housing that we have all lived with? This will give tenement owners the ability to increase their units if they can meet some of the other requirements, allow them to remain, and what I would say would be creating an affordable unit, not necessarily a market rate unit. because we've been great with creating market rate housing, but by maybe increasing some of these tenements and some of the unit density in those, we'll be able to create a different type of housing as well, which is also much needed. So when we look at this, and I think this is part of the reason why we don't have a room full here, when you look through the district, you'll see that have been a number of multifamily developments. Let's look at the piece that was just above the gas station that's further down on Duval, just about at the corner of Turner. That's a commercial mill district. That building was permitted through a special permit, so it wasn't by right. But that's the kind of use that now fits in that area. The building at the other corner of Turner, where the Bay Coast Bank went in, that also required special zoning. So the construction activities that are taking place and for planning purposes fit our need, just don't comply with zoning, so again, we don't get the credit for it. So in this area, our concern when we looked at it was, okay, well, we do have some industrial users that are up in the larger blue commercial mill district, which is Prober Lane, Ace Street, Weaver Street. You know, there is still that use up there. When they created the WTOD district in the bylaw itself, it gave special protection for these types of uses that were in existence prior to 2011. So they can continue, they can expand, they can alter those uses. So we're not eliminating their uses by right. It's still written in the regulations that they can still exist. That's within our bylaw itself, which is a nice fail-safe, because I would have expected that we would have had some people worried that, hey, you guys are zoning me out of this area, I'm gonna be surrounded. So the bylaw specifically made sure that that would not take place. On top of that, Massachusetts general law, with regards to grandfathered uses, any use that currently exists in this entire district, whether it's in the G district, BL, R4, M, or the CMD, they're grandfathered as a matter of right. So the existing zoning for those uses can remain as long as they stay in consistent use without a lapse for a 2-year period of time. So I think what we're looking at is an area that is prime, and again, we're trying to plan, right? We're planners and we're planning departments. We're trying to plan for the next phase, okay? So we don't want to deal with this 3 years from now, 5 years from now, when the center corridor is all built up and now we're stagnant. This will allow for that to run a consistent distance off of the Taunton River through that area and basically make a shape that will provide the ability for great new development and redevelopment of the existing structures that are in there. If you have any questions, I'd be more than glad to answer any of them that you may have.
I have a question. So
Yeah.
I think this is fabulous. I think Fall River, we can handle, you know, by nature, we have increased density. We have a lot of three-family homes. So I think it's good that you're being realistic and saying, you know, reducing the parking requirements, the parcel size, the lot coverage. Before we vote on this, can I see what those percentages are, what it's being reduced to, like,
Yeah,
before we vote?
I can go
yay or
through them now if you'd like.
nay? You,
So
yeah.
in our
In
zone.
comparison to the other, like, multi,
Yeah, so in our zoning bylaw, which is this book, so for instance, I spoke about the G district, which is a good portion of this. I can't see the plan, but Chris, if you can tell them what color G is, I think it's the,
It's like the
Tan?
tan.
yeah, okay, so that's probably about half of the district, more than half of what we're dealing with. In that district now, the biggest structure you can have is a 3-family residence. And the calculation starts with 5,000 square feet for the first unit,
Yep.
1,500 square feet for the additional unit, 50 feet of frontage, building setbacks of 12-foot frontage, 10-foot side yard, lot coverage of 25%. Now, if you drive through this area and you look at the structures that are built there, you all see 3, 4, 5 tenement houses on tiny, tiny lots. The problem with our zoning was, it was created after all these houses were built, right? Most of these houses are 1905, 1920, right, when they all started to be built. All this zoning came in afterwards. Well, guess what? Those 3 and 4s are still standing there, encompassing almost the entire lot, 0 green space. So what's in place now only allows for new construction activity, which through this corridor, we haven't seen much, right? I mean, how many 3 tenements do you see taken down? You don't, because they're economically viable structures and parcels of land. You know, people have made their entire portfolio buying 3, 4, 6-family homes and have done very well doing that. So that's the size, minimum of 5,000 square feet. If you look at what the WTOD district starts with, the minimum lot size is 2,500 square feet. The same 50 feet of frontage, front yard setback of 10 instead of 12, side yard is 10, which is also the same as what it's in now. Lot coverage is 80%. So what we've looked at and what we've found is when you apply the waterfront, the WTOD district, to the existing structures, it brings them into compliance with zoning. None of them meet the requirements for the G district, but they will now meet the requirements most likely for the WTOD district. Entirely different.
Question, so the 2,500, is that for the first unit or for 4 units?
That's for the entire parcel.
So for.
Now, there are development standards that dictate what you can put. Lot
So-
coverage,
so
building
the-
setbacks, parking specifically
Right.
is what controls. So you can't say, okay, I want to put 200 units on 2,500 square feet of land. Well, you just can't do that. But if you can't provide parking at the required ratio,
What's the new parking ratio?
it will be for this district still, because WTOD is intended for larger developments.
So when was that zoning table put out? I have
This?
a copy of it, yeah.
But this has been in existence forever.
With this new zoning area?
Yeah, when it came in, whatever, 08 or 11, when it was implemented.
Okay.
So under the waterfront, let me read you specifically what the intentions of the WTOD were.
WTOD was September 6th of 2011.
Okay,
2011?
so 86-175, waterfront and transit-oriented development district. See, under the dimensional regulations, see the table, as I was just explaining to you. Maximum building height shall not exceed 6 stories or 80 feet, whichever is greater. This restriction shall not apply to chimneys, ventilators, tanks, bulkheads, and other accessory features required above roofs or towers. The maximum building height may be increased to 12 stories by a special permit by the zoning board of appeals. Minimum parking requirements, dwelling units, 1.5 spaces per unit if less than 50 units. Currently, in the G district, it is 2 parking spaces per unit. And also in this, it's reduced to 1.25 spaces for buildings over 50 units. So all studies have indicated as you get increased units, the ratio of parking 2 units, especially now when we're dealing with mostly 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms in these larger development buildings. So what you'll find is the majority of these structures, again, that are in non-compliance for the G district, many of them provide 0 parking. So to expand on them, they would now need to meet this parking requirement that's already in the WTOD. Something very important here, with restaurant and retail establishments, no dedicated parking spaces are required. Hotel and lodging, 1 space for each hotel room or lodging room. Office use, 1 space per 200 square feet of gross floor area. After 10,000 square feet of gross floor area, 1 space for every 1,000. Industrial uses, 1 space for every 500 square feet. Water-dependent uses, 0.6 spaces per each boat slip or mooring. Mixed-use developments that share parking spaces, which is really what we want here. We want an apartment building that has a restaurant on the first floor or a retail component. Containing more than 200 spaces may reduce the required number of spaces by 30%. So those are the development standards that are currently under WTOD. And what we've found, and I've used this argument multiple times in my past practice, when we look at parking trends of this type of development, there are municipalities that have completely done away with off-street parking requirements, and many that have reduced it down to 0.5 spaces per unit. Now, we're not Boston. We understand that we cannot completely abandon the need for on-site parking to make sure that we can accommodate the types of facilities that we're building. But nationally, and more so than that, regionally, the trends are getting away from creating these huge parking demands. I live in Dartmouth, I've done a lot of development work in Dartmouth. How often do you drive by any of the shopping centers in Dartmouth, other than Christmas, and we have a vast parking facility that's probably 20% utilized 90% of the time? So when we get into a world where we're trying to create low-impact development, more green space, less asphalt, that's the way that you can do it, is come up with reasonable parking demands. So we see this moving in that same direction. We know we cannot abandon it. We think the thought that was given to this bylaw when they created it, that allowed that, it's basically a half a space reduction compared to what we would normally require for everywhere else, was more than reasonable at the time, and we still feel that as well. When we get back to the commercial mill district, for instance, again, we've had many multifamily projects permitted and built in these areas. That's all done by a special permit. Most of the parking requirements that were approved for these types of developments is a rate of 1-to-1. That was all done through the zoning board of appeals. I'm trying to think what the next district that would be substantial enough. The R4 district is just so small, it doesn't make much of a difference. So I think 90% of this is G district and commercial mill district.
I just wanted to add a little bit to that. We do stuff all over the country. That's really the rate or the direction we're seeing. Not only is it a lot of people working from home these days, that commercial component, the office space component of it, we're actually going through a lot of our projects and asking for reductions from that. And again, we're actually ahead of the curve right now with what this is done, what you're proposing here. And again, this is a transit-oriented project. Up in Weymouth, the Southfield project, we used a 1-to-1 ratio because the whole idea was people would be using the commuter rail to commute up to Boston and vice versa to come down here to visit, and there's less need for passenger vehicles. So I think this is a positive step in the right direction, actually getting this zoning in place. As I say, I came here 15 years ago and this is what was needed, and I'm glad that that document is now taking to the next level. And again, there is a master plan that's out there right now, and they have at least the guidelines, at least with the zoning here. So the zoning is the legal component to this. So I think this is a great stride in the right direction.
So the redevelopment authority just last night hired Stantec, which is the consulting firm that will create the master plan, not for this area, but for the area that falls in between the two Duval Street area where all the highway used to be. That's already zoned WTOD. When they looked at what the framework that they were already coming into, they were, astounded that this was the frame that they get to start to create their painting. Normally, they can't start to work on their canvas until this was passed already for them. You'll see there was a proposal, I'm sure you're all familiar with, 101 President Avenue, the plaza, that was supposed to be before the Zoning Board of Appeals next Thursday. Fell through because of some lease issues that were going on with the projects. But when they met with me, and this was a while ago, I had explained to them, gentlemen, we're working on changing the zoning that potentially much of the relief that you're needing would now not be needed. They couldn't wait. Now this takes, probably 3 to 6 months to come to fruition by the time, so you'll discuss it tonight. You don't have to vote on it tonight. You can table it to the next meeting. The Zoning Board of Appeals will also take it up next Thursday night at their meeting. They can do the same discussion, go and do some research, come back at the next meeting, and then vote when you're ready. This all gets to the City Council. The City Council then has a series of public hearings.
It's a joint hearing within 65 days with the planning board and the city council.
At the time the recommendation is sent.
Yes, so
Okay.
when we send the recommendation, we have 65 days to hold a joint public hearing.
Okay.
All of the abutters, so anyone that's in this district is
We'll all be
notified,
notified at that point. Yeah.
published in the paper.
So by no means is this the end-all. You're not putting a stamp on this, infinite approval. But by all means, if you need to do more research, if you want to come to the planning office and we can and throw around these ideas, by all means, we can go that approach as well.
The only thing that I would recommend as a board, or as a member of the board, is that time is really, it's essential that you strike the iron when it's hot, in the sense of, you already have people who are developing around this waterfront boulevard. Again, the Almac site is a perfect example of that. The people who are going to actually do the master plan for the actual corridor, which, again, that will be basically, it's taking the same, it's got the same type of zoning relief and everything associated with it. But think of it this way, if you're going to build this beautiful entity, which is now the urban boulevard of the waterfront, and then you have the adjacent lands associated with it, and they want to do development on that one, you're pretty much trying to set the bar of what's going to be zoned, how it's going to be zoned, and what you can actually put there. Again, it's just not the Route 79 project anymore, but it's the adjacent up until North Main Street, and up from Weaver Cove, and all the way to the south. So, again, this is a great stride. I'm glad that this is happening.
And what this does is, right now, once the master planning goes through, this will be, let's say, shopped out to master developers, where there may be one developer that develops this entire corridor, okay? Because they know what works, they know what their marketing studies dictate.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be better for them to know, okay, what I'm going to build here, when I look towards the water, and I see the opportunity there and what's being done in this same zoning district that I'm in, for the type of development that I want to do. But now when I look to the east, I see no change. I see no growth. I see no other development. So when a developer comes in and now he's looking at this corridor, he can now look across the street and say, look what the city's done. They've created this canvas for my abutters up to North Main Street to do the same types of development, increasing my investment or the potential success of my investment. So it basically brings, it's just like do you ever want to have the most expensive house on the street? Or do you want to have the least expensive? No, you want to be in the middle, like-minded with surrounding properties. That's how you create value. And that's what we're trying to do, is to create an area that creates value for these developers, and that they can see the potential. They may continue moving on and purchase the abutting properties as well, but it gives the opportunity for an expanse other than just the sliver that we're dealing with, just the 19 acres of this Route 79 corridor.
I mean, personally, I mean, I agree. I agree with Mike that this is a great step in the right direction, and with you, Dan, as well. It's something where, I mean, we're nipping it in the bud. We're trying to put the horse in front of the cart, and, you know, so we can keep moving forward. I mean, it's to me, I mean, I'm gonna put it out to my members, but I guess we either have does anybody else have any comments before I, because we could either accept it and recommendation, put a recommendation together to send it back to city council. As far as us, we could table it. If somebody needs any more information or wants to study it a little further, we can do that as well. But it's up to you folks. I mean, I know how I would vote, but that's me. So if I can either have a recommendation to move forward and send it to the city council.
I would recommend it. Yeah, motion.
Second.
All right,
We have
so,
public input first that we should,
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
just ask, because I think you have one letter that you want to read into.
oh, this one here?
Yep, right here.
Oh, right here. All right, we do have one letter to read. It's proposed WTOD zoning map amendment. Dear Chairman Ferrera, please accept this letter as support for the proposed zoning map amendment, requesting that the city council extend the waterfront and transit-oriented development district to the westerly side of North Main Street from Walnut Street to the westerly side of Wayland Street. As you are aware, the realignment of Duval Street and Route 79 will create more than 1 million square feet of mixed-use development in the new land created in the central portion of Duval Street. This new land presents an opportunity to create a new neighborhood that links the waterfront with the existing neighborhood, which are currently separated from the waterside access. Without a better coordinated zoning plan for the development of land created by the proposed realignment, the city of Fall River and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts will lose a unique, once-in-a-generation opportunity to recalibrate the entire waterfront area. With the exception of the WTOD, the zoning districts in the Duval Street area are quite fragmented. For instance, 3 discrete areas have CMD zoning, and 3 discrete areas have B-L zoning. Similarly, while the 3 residential zones R-4, G, and M border one another or touch residential zones outside the study area. They are occasionally compressed into regions as narrow as 2 blocks or are wrapped around larger industrial areas. The high degree of fragmented and inconsistency with this area is undesirable. First, the current zoning places incompatible uses, namely low-density residential districts and the city's heaviest industrial zones next to one another. This arrangement has potential to adversely impact residential neighborhoods, and traditional industrial use can generate air, noise, pollution, and often involve transportation of goods via large trucks. Since industrial areas tend to shut down at the end of the workday, these zones also have potential to create large holes within the existing residential fabric that feel unsafe to travel through at night. Further, the inconsistency could make the area less pleasant for pedestrians and make it feel less accessible to visitors. Finally, streamlining zoning will make it easier to understand and maintain. This could potentially smooth development process, making Fall River a more attractive place to build, and reduce the work of the planning board and the city planners division. In addition to inconsistent use, the dimensional regulations, the zoning district designate parking and loading requirements, which further confuse development opportunities along the waterfront. The R-4G, I believe that was it, and that was, no. GM and BL districts shared different parking and loading requirements. The number of spaces required is dictated by use, however, to those districts that allow use with significant parking demands. For example, retail businesses and hospitals will have more parking than districts where uses with less intensive parking requirements are dominant. The WTOD calls for less parking by use than the other 5 zones. This is ideal given the anticipated opening of the commuter rail in June of 2024. In my opinion, changes to the WTOD footprint and regulations are imperative if the city is going to truly realize the community benefit of the realignment of Duval Street and Route 79, to allow for the development of new residential multifamily and mixed-use development by right, support high-quality design, which will, which will reward developers with advanced, thoughtfully designed projects, and create a waterfront that is vibrant, pedestrian and bike-friendly, and reduces the dependency and city parking needs for people who choose to live, work, recreate near the commuter rail platform and surrounding areas envisioned by the expanded WTOD. Thank you for your time and attention in this important matter. I hope you vote favorably upon the proposed WTOD zoning map amendment. Sincerely, Kenneth Fiola, Executive Vice President. Kenneth Fiola Jr. So we have that correspondent, which is obviously in favor. So So we had a motion, was it Mike?
Yes.
Mike made a motion to recommend, and I had a second by, was it Mario second?
I second.
And Mario. We'll do a roll call on this one. Beth Andre,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Gloria,
Yes,
Mario,
yes.
and I, John Ferrer, vote yes as well. All right, so that's all set. Number 3, receipt of correspondence, review and discussion of the nomination of the Bradford Durfee Textile School for the National Register of Historic Places from the Massachusetts Historical Commission. I have a letter here from, this is from Alan McCumber, I believe, or to Alan, it's from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts regarding National Register of Historic Places, Bradford Durfee Textile School forever. Do you want me to read this whole letter?
You don't have to, you can just, somebody can make a motion.
We have a motion to put this letter on file.
Make a motion to place that on file.
I'll second that.
Gloria and Beth. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. And I vote aye as well. Okay. Now, we've got Form A, number 4 on the agenda. Application for endorsement of plan believed not to require approval, an A&R plan of land, file number 23-1564, owner 109 Howe Street LLC, applicant Parallel Products Solar Energy LLC, property location 109 Howe Street, assessors map B-20, lot 1.
So what you have before you is a relatively simple A&R plan. What it does is it allows the subdivision of what we all know as the mill complex down at 109 Howe Street. This cuts off the vacant portion of the property, which is to the northeast of Howe Street, Crawford Street at the end of Howe. This property, which is lot 2 on this, had just recently received a zoning variance to allow a condominium development to go through there. So this is the formal process of separating the mill structures from the remaining land. They meet all of the requirements for endorsement.
Any comments? Do I have a motion to accept?
Motion to accept.
Motion by Beth, second.
I'll second.
Mario, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, as well. Number 5, Form A, application for endorsement of plan believed not to require approval, A&R plan of land, file number 23-1565, owner applicant Kevin Oliveira, property location 334 Vale Street, assessors map E-01, lot 50.
So this is a piece of land located at the corner of Vale and Slade Street at 334 Vale. There is currently a 5-family dwelling, and then adjacent to it, an existing commercial building with a little parking facility behind it. This property was granted a variance maybe 2 or 3 months ago to allow this subdivision to happen. And then the use of the existing commercial building is going to change to a single-unit residential building, I believe. So in compliance with the requirements of the variance, the plan does meet the requirements for endorsement.
Any comments by the members?
No.
I'm sorry, I just had a question. I had put on here, I thought we had denied them. They wanted to do something with this commercial property, multifamily. Had that changed to this now proposed single-family?
Well, I think, what's before you is just the subdivision, not the
Yeah.
use.
Okay.
This may have had to come back for a rehearing.
Yes, so it was originally denied in June of 2022
Yep.
by ZBA, and then they came back in March or April of this year for a rehearing here,
Yep,
planning
which was
board.
approved.
Yes,
Yep.
it was approved, and then they went in front of zoning board again. I can't remember if it was September or
Yeah, I
October.
know it was just recently,
So, yeah, the only question I have on this is that they got denied the first time because they didn't meet the zoning requirements.
Yeah.
They came to us, and if it was substantially changed, we had to say, okay, we're not gonna deny you, you did enough work, right? It still doesn't comply, but now it goes back to the zoning, looking like the planning board says, we just blessed this project.
No,
And then the zoning,
That's not the truth.
okay,
Well,
That's what you may feel is the conceived notion by the zoning board of appeals. The zoning board of appeals clearly understands the process, and that's why we make it clear when you vote. You are not giving any credence or value to the proposal, just that it is different. Zoning board
Substantially different.
Zoning
That's
board of
what we
appeals
voted on.
understands
Right, that's
that
all we voted for.
completely,
But-
and
but-
that is discussed at great length.
but do you understand how that kind of impacts us as professionals who are supposed to be looking at this? I understand,
No,
they've
you're
done
not
enough
supposed to be
makeup.
looking at it for zoning or for use.
Yeah, that was the vote we made before. We said, we agree with the new plan. It's substantially different enough that you can resubmit it within a year.
That's where
what we
your
voted
duty
months ago.
ends.
And then we ended right
And then
there.
the zoning just blesses
Yeah.
it, even though it
If they
still
want
doesn't
to, or they can
comply.
deny it.
They can deny it, yeah.
The zoning board of
they could have
appeals.
denied it.
Yeah.
It's a different board, which we can probably get you on.
All we did was vote on
Sure.
it as substantially different.
No, it just looks a little shady, and I know we're not on television, but that's not if it was going from zoning, and zoning did not bless it because it didn't do X, Y, and Z, right? And then it comes to us, and we said, you did enough work here to go back there, so we could have just said no to you, and just said, okay, we're not going to, we gave it, we went through the process, said you did enough work to it, go back to in front of zoning, and the zoning's gonna bless it again. But we don't know if it still is not,
No, this is
Well,
different.
But Mike, I also,
Yeah,
this is
Sure.
A&R approval not required. I've argued a lot of parcels that have come before us that I
Yeah.
don't agree with the way they've been subdivided.
Yeah.
Makes no difference how I vote.
Yeah.
In 2 weeks, it's gonna.
That's why I said it's specifically in
Right, in
compliance
2
with
weeks,
the
it's,
grant
it's,
of relief. That-
it's like a
that is
2-week
it.
appeal period. Whether, I could vote, and I have voted no, and
Yeah.
I voted against them. But it doesn't mean anything, because it's approval not required. It's just a formality coming through us.
Mike,
And I
just
believe
wanna
we are on TV, by the way.
yeah.
I just want to
Well,
clarify.
good, no, it's fine.
Just want to clarify, when this came before us, in order for them to have another shot, bite at the apple at the ZBA.
Yeah.
Within a 1-year period, if they want to go back to the ZBA,
Mm-hmm.
the way we have our regulations set up, they can't do that unless it's substantially different than the plan.
Sure, no, I
So-
understand that aspect of it.
Yeah, so we only vote on whether or not it's substantially different. For all we know, and then the ZBA could have still said no, or they could have said yes.
Right.
So that's what we
Because what
voted
happens
on.
is, you don't know why ZBA
Yeah.
denied it in the first place,
Yeah.
or why they approved it in the second place.
But many people don't know that aspect of it.
gotcha.
And
Okay,
it-
that's what
and
you wanna
it's- And
clarify.
it's perceived, it is
Okay,
perceived as
okay.
you got, it went to the planning board,
Yeah, yeah.
and the planning board said, yeah, we gave it the blessing, and the reality of it is, we didn't give it a blessing.
No,
It
right.
made enough of a modification to it to
Yeah.
go back in front of the zoning.
Right,
And
that's
again,
our blood.
I think
That's
anybody
very-
that thought that just got enough clarity on
Yeah,
that one.
I think
tonight.
so.
Well,
Thanks, Mike.
when our decision goes to the zoning board of appeals in writing,
Yeah.
that's what it states. That they've met
Sure.
the standard for substantial modifications for the purposes of which it was originally denied. You, by no means is it perceived that it is an endorsement of this
Right.
board.
No.
That the proposed use, subdivision, anything is adequate for.
They can rehear it, but they can also re-deny it.
Yeah,
right.
it just gives them a chance to rehear it within
Yeah.
a 1-year period, that's it.
So, all right. So we've got, do we have,
Yeah.
okay, so we're on this one. We're still on this one. I just need a motion.
I make a motion, we approve it?
Gloria, second.
I'll second. I'm sorry.
Mario, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm gonna say
Aye.
no.
And Mike
I
is a
know it's gonna
no.
pass anyway, but again,
You're saying no, okay,
I don't think, yeah.
Okay. Item number
Most other
6.
towns and cities don't operate that way. It just, I'm
No, that's
just,
Massachusetts general law, that's not the city of
Yeah.
Fall River. So every municipality in the Commonwealth
Yeah.
acts that way.
but they vote typically on what
No.
the end of.
The planning
portion of
board
it.
does not. Absolutely not.
I've been on 3 of them, so I don't.
Okay.
All right, going on to 6. Form A, an application for endorsement of plan believed not to require approval, A&R plan of land, file number 23-1566. Owner applicant Savoy Street LLC. Property location 111 Savoy Street. Assessors map L-09-73.
So this is a parcel of land at 111 Savoy Street. It's an existing single-family home that it was two separate parcels at one point in time, but the parcels were merged because an addition that was built on the existing single-family home encroached onto the second parcel. And then also within that, the parcels merged because the zoning district had changed from 6,000 square feet to 12,000 square feet. So they appeared before the zoning board of appeals, which allowed them to now subdivide this parcel, creating a sliver of land from the parcel to the south, and to be able to convey that to the parcel to the north, which would now alleviate the encroachment and providing a 5-foot setback. And then it would now be a new single-family home constructed on parcel 2, which has no bearing on this board. They've met the requirements for an A&R endorsement in conformance with their granted zoning relief.
Any questions by the board? Motion to approve.
Motion.
Beth?
Yes.
Any second?
Second?
Gloria, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Right, okay. All right. Number 7, Form A, application for endorsement of plan believed not to require approval, A&R, plan of land, file number 23-1567, owner applicant 110 Chase LLC, property location 110 Chase Street, assessors map A-03, lot 1.
So although a very daunting looking plan, this is 110 Chase Street, and it's just the size and scale of the parcels that make it daunting. This is one of the larger Duro properties that ran along Globe and Chase, also fronting on Center Street and coming in off the end of South Beacon Street. So this also received zoning relief, allowing the conversion of this very large mill building and some other outbuildings to residential homes. This was, again, in the commercial mill district, so going through that process allows this. So part of that proposal was to separate the one singular larger building, which you see on the proposed lot number 2. That building would now sit on its own lot. The other 4 outbuildings and a newly constructed building that would be forthcoming would now fall on parcel 1. So again, they've met all the requirements. This is the 4th revision to this plan, because as we scoured it and asked for changes and modifications and notes and all of those different types of things, they've finally come to provide us with what we were expecting and what we require for an endorsement. So I can wholeheartedly tell you that after much review and conversations, that the plan meets the requirements for endorsement in accordance with the zoning relief that was previously granted by the zoning board of appeals.
Any questions by the board?
Yeah, just one question. So what was it originally zoned for? And then what did it just get a special permit?
Well,
to
it
be
was Duro Manufacturing is what
Okay.
was there. So
Industrial
It was
or
originally
something.
industrial.
Okay.
All of the industrial districts got rezoned to commercial mill district.
Okay,
And then under commercial mill district, by a special permit, you're allowed residential uses for multifamily. So that's how the uses got to be where the uses are.
Gotcha.
But for subdivision purposes, this meets all the requirements for an approval, not required an endorsement.
So do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make
Yes.
a motion to approve.
Mario, second.
I'll second it.
Mike, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye as well. Mike. And we got approval of the minutes from the November 8th meeting. Believe that's the one that Mike wasn't here.
It was not.
So Mike is the only one that was not present. If I have a motion to accept the minutes of the meeting.
A motion to accept.
Motion by Beth, second.
I second.
Second Gloria, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And citizens input, which is none, I believe. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll
Motion.
make a motion to adjourn.
A second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone.